Hi everybody, thanks for watching Rocn Recovery this week. Today I want to talk a little bit about harm reduction.
Okay.
What do you think of when you think of harm reduction?
I think of it as a pathway to recovery for a lot of people struggling with substance use disorder. I think of, I don't think of complete abstinence. I think of somebody who is maybe working their way there or is trying to limit their use or dive into something a little less harmful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, harm reduction gets a bad reputation sometimes.
Yeah.
And my question is all harm reduction really reducing the harm? Because there's some things that are coined as harm reduction that actually they don't seem to be mitigating any of the dangers that come with, trying to find recovery.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it depends on where you're getting information. I think that, a lot of, I haven't personally seen anything that led me to believe that the harm reduction was in fact more harmful. I know a lot of colleagues and people that I work with in the field that are advocates for harm reduction, and they're legitimate. And the progress that they've seen made with people that are utilizing those services or participating in those harm reduction paths are working good recovery. So,
well, I talk to a lot of families, and one of the complaints that I just heard this morning was about how when a lot of families go online to find out how to help their loved ones, for example, if they're trying to detox at home, they come up with these concoctions that they say will help with the symptoms. And it turns out that sometimes they can actually lead to an overdose and death.
Right.
And the lady that I was talking to today was talking about how they were saying to give the person benzodiazepines along with cough syrup, which we know has alcohol in it. And I just was scratching my head I can't believe that somebody would actually give that as advice. Obviously it's not a medical professional.
Right.
Right?
I agree. And like I said before, you got to be careful of what you hear or see online, because some people just don't know what information they're putting out there. However, I wouldn't necessarily describe that as harm reduction, because it's not a path that that person is choosing to use for their recovery. That's more of a at home, help your child or help your loved one detox type of thing. I don't necessarily put that in the harm reduction category, but I agree with you that, you just got to be careful what you see and hear from people.
Yeah. Well, that's the start of it.
Yeah.
And from there and give them this to have daily maintenance to stay off the drug.
Right.
And
well, I've noticed that, when I would assume that most people, when they hear harm reduction, they think medicated assisted recovery or treatment. And I think one of the key components of MAT is having a doctor involved and having that medication distributed by a professional who, knows what they're talking about.
We hope.
We hope. But I think that that's one of the key components of that pathway.
You know what though? See, now this is where we differ, because when I think of harm reduction, I don't think of the MAT programs. I think of that as maintenance. And when I think of harm reduction, the first thing that comes to my mind is needle exchange.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that I necessarily would put MAT in harm reduction. I think that a lot of people would say that. But I think of safe consumption sites when I think harm reduction. And there's just a lot of components and layers to harm reduction. So
There is. Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to remember that not all pathways look like mine.
Or mine.
Or yours, right? And there are different avenues to get to recovery. And some of them start with harm reduction. But we have to go to a break. We'll be right back. Everybody, thanks for staying with us on Rocn Recovery. On Rocn Recovery, we like to talk about stories of hope.
Yeah.
And how recovery is possible and it's happening all around us. So I was hoping maybe you could share a little bit about your recovery story with us.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, in order to get to the recovery part, we need to backtrack a little bit. So, in my preteen years, middle school age, I started using, and I know I say this a lot, but I don't remember exactly what I felt when I first got high or like what that feeling necessarily was, but I remembered it took me outside of myself. And that's one of the things I really liked about using, was I didn't have to feel pain, like emotional pain.
And you know what? A lot of us, we don't like ourselves the way we are. We think that we're supposed to be something else. We're just not happy. There's just something missing.
Yeah.
Right? And so anything that takes us away from that to allow us to be whatever it is we imagine we could be, right? Is like, it seems like a good solution.
Well, I lived in a world of fantasy.
You did.
I did. In middle school, and I'd say even in 9th grade, parts of 10th grade, I truly thought I was a flower child from the 60s. Do you remember this?
Oh boy, I've got pictures to prove it. Yep.
And I have the senior superlative to prove it. Born in the wrong decade.
You didn't get it from me.
No.
I was not a 60s child.
I didn't get it from anybody. It was kind of just like, oh, look at that idea. And I would watch all the Beatles movies and Across the Universe. I loved that movie. And I remember when I first got high, I thought, this fits in so well. Like, this is who I am. And it's crazy because you know how Facebook memories will come up, and one of my posts from like years ago was I was a flower during the summer of love, and I was on a hippie's head. Anyways, so I was messed up and complete delusion. What I, come to think of it, I think that I made up that character because I was so unhappy with who I was. And people knew Carlee as that hippie. And I liked that person.
And it's safe to hide
safe
behind that image of who other people think you are. It like takes away that vulnerability that we want to avoid, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the perfect example of that would be somebody who like acts like a tough person, but inside they're dying inside. And I think in my case it was, I don't like myself and I'm going to pretend to be a flower child. So that was what using was like, at least in the beginning, and it was fun at first, and I finally felt like I fit in. I wasn't being picked on for my weight or my hair or what I looked like. If I was getting picked on, it was for being a dirty hippie. And I was okay with that because I made that choice type of thing. I think it took away that pain. And I liked getting to decide for myself who I was, type of thing, if that makes sense. Absolutely. And people accepted it. Like my friends at the time accepted that. And yeah, like I said, it was fun in the beginning, like a lot of people say it is, and then I couldn't understand why my friends that I was partying with on the weekends could show up for school during the week. Mm-hmm. And this was like my senior year, beginning of my senior year. And I mean, I was honor roll student, straight A's, was in honors classes and AP classes, taking college courses in high school. Like, I was smart. I was a smart kid. Still am smart, I think. and my grades were slowly, maybe not so slowly, dropping. And I just didn't put in that effort anymore. Like, nothing was important anymore. I was captain of my volleyball team, didn't play volleyball towards the end of my my years in high school, and the substances took over, and using was more important than anything. And, you know, senior year especially, like, I didn't enjoy the last homecoming or the 100 days into the school year, 100 days left. I forget what the 100 days of something was, but I just didn't enjoy a lot of the senior activities because I wasn't present, like, for them.
Let me ask you a question. So we're talking about high school here, and you're talking about kind of hitting your bottom in high school. And I think for a lot of people that would be hard to comprehend how that's possible, because a lot of times as parents, when we see our child, we want to think it's just a phase. They're fine. They're going to go through this phase, then they're going to go to college and it'll be different or whatever. What do you think the difference was? How did you realize that all of this stuff was crashing down on you so early?
My mental health was just completely out of whack. I wasn't using socially. I was using by myself. And I hated myself so much. You know, I wasn't smelling good. I didn't look good. I didn't dress appropriately. And I just cared very little about my appearance and about myself. And it just wasn't fun at the end. I really hated who I was.
Now, people who know us know mother-daughter, we have a wonderful relationship, right? I mean, best friends, and, you know, I think the world of you, and we do things together and we laugh together a lot, right? Yeah. But there was a time when there was a lot of tension between you and I.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the time that you moved out of the house at, 17 or 17 years old, and went to live with your dad, I was pretty angry about the situation. I didn't approve of what was going on. And, you know, it just, I don't want people to think that, like, there was no conflict. Like, it's
there was a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
I mean, I did things that I never thought I would do to you. And I treated you absolutely terrible. And that was another thing that was, like, staring me in the face towards the end of my use was, like, how in less than a year did this completely spiral out of control. And I, you know, to be honest with you, my last use I didn't think was going to be my last use. And I remember this is how I got into recovery, was I needed surgery. I needed to have my gallbladder removed. And, you know, had I not been using and taken, you know, the time to go to the doctor and do what I needed to do, maybe I wouldn't have needed that surgery. But I knew that they were gonna do the anesthesia and the other medication that they were gonna give me, so I needed to be abstinent from substances. So for a month. So I stopped using, and I knew that, you were going to take really good care of me. So I asked if I could move back home after the surgery, and you said yeah. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to use at your house.
Yeah.
So
with strict conditions.
Very,
home, right?
very strict conditions. And, you know, I had the surgery, and after I don't know, I think you brought me to a meeting. You brought me to a meeting, and...
Because I didn't trust you to be home alone.
Good call. That was a very good call. And
you're coming with me.
And to be honest, like, the thought of recovery was like, you know, it was like seesawing in my head. Do I want it? Do I not? Because I thought, you know, I could finish up the last few months of high school at my mom's, and then when I go to college, I can use again because I won't be at her house. You know, I'll be on campus. And when I went to that meeting with you, I wasn't expecting to listen. Like, I wasn't, like, trying to find recovery at the time, but there were other young people in the room that were recovering. And that made a huge impact on me. And I thought, if other young people can do it, then maybe I can too. You know, I had a lot of misconceptions about what recovery looked like, and I thought it was just for people who were older. I didn't know that in high school I could stop using and find recovery. So I asked you that night, you know, do I need this? Like,
you know what? We're going to go to a break, and we're going to start with that when we come back. Stay with us. Hi, everybody. Thanks for staying with us on Rocn Recovery. So we've been talking about your recovery journey.
Yep.
And I'd love for you to continue just where you left off.
Sure. So after that meeting, I asked you a whole bunch of questions about recovery and the particular 12-step program that, you know, you belong to and that you practice, and you gave me some good advice and good suggestions.
I did?
You did. And I that's where my recovery journey began. I remember being very nervous about going to meetings by myself because you laid down some pretty hard rules. You said, I can't be your sponsor, my sponsor can't be your sponsor, and none of my close friends can be your sponsor, so good luck. Oh, and you're going to meetings by yourself. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, but you didn't know in the background, you know, when you went to your first meeting, I called up my friends that were in that home group, and I said, she's coming, please keep an eye on her, I'm worried.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
That's messed up.
That's what you didn't know, but I was concerned, you know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure you were okay.
Man, someone had a little trouble letting go.
I don't know who you're talking about.
I think I'm talking about you. So, I didn't know that. And I was just nervous because I know, you know, you have been in recovery for decades at that time, and I was nervous. You know, I used to go to meetings when I was a baby, and I thought that I was so self-absorbed and conceited that I thought that if I went in there and I introduced myself as someone needing help, they were gonna think, oh no, but like, not you. And I thought they were gonna be so disappointed in me, and that wasn't the case at all, even a little bit. And I remember the first meeting I went to by myself, and I got my first suggestion from my first sponsor at that meeting. And that was at the church, little church next door. They were doing a first step meeting, and she said, maybe you want to go to that one because you're newer to this thing. And I was told to kind of wait a little bit before I found a sponsor, which, you know, is somebody in, you know, 12 steps to help you work on your recovery with you and help you do step work and get to the bottom of this thing called the disease of addiction. And I knew at that moment, I was like, she's in my head. And she always gave me good suggestions, you know, so.
Yeah, that's really cool, because it's hard to ask somebody to sponsor you, or ask somebody for help, or ask for help in general when you have addiction, first of all, the fear of rejection, right, is like overwhelming. And I don't know why it's such a monster. Not just in my head, in your head. It's like, it seems across the board to people that I talk to who are in recovery, they just have this idea of they don't want to let anybody else know that they need help, right? Which is,
it's interesting. And like, we hear that saying, the phone weighs 1,000 pounds. It really does. it really does. Even now, like, being in recovery and having 6+ years, working on my recovery and asking for help for 6 years, I still find it hard to ask for help in certain areas of my life because it's like, that first of all, that fear of rejection, like I can't help you, or I don't want to help you, which 9 times out of 10, no one's going to say, I don't want to help you. But it's,
how dare you even ask me?
Yeah, right. But it's something that needs to be done. And, I've used meetings and people in recovery to my advantage, like to help me through some of my issues that aren't even related to substance use. Like, I remember being arrested in recovery for shoplifting and petty larceny. So I don't know why I said it like that. It's nothing to be proud of. But I remember as soon as they let me go, I went to a meeting and I was late. I think there was like 10 minutes left of the meeting when I got there, and I shared about, just being arrested, and I was crying, and I don't know if anybody understood what I was saying because there was snot everywhere. And afterwards, I wasn't scolded. I wasn't told, you shouldn't have done that, or lectured or anything. People came up to me and said, oh, me too. Oh, that happened to me as well. Here's how I got through it. Here's how I recovered from that, or am recovering from that. And since that day, I haven't stolen anything. So
that's awesome.
To sum up, it's like asking for help involves, like, it's just so many layers to that.
Yeah.
And like, you got to do it throughout your recovery. It's not just the one asking for help and then you're good. It's continuing to learn how to ask for help.
Well, it's important to say, too, that especially in early recovery, now you take the drug away and you got that void and you're looking for something to fill it. A lot of people become very promiscuous. Some people start shoplifting, gambling. Like, there's a lot of different things that can... Eating, not eating, right? A lot of different things can sneak in and destroy you just as much as the drugs could have, right? So that's very easy. So it's important that when there's something in front of us that isn't good, we speak up and we kind of turn ourselves in and say, I did this, now what? And usually there's people around you to give you guidance, right?
Right.
Awesome. Okay, we got to go to a break, but we're going to be right back. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Rocn Recovery. We've been talking about Carlee's journey into recovery. And you've been in recovery for how long now?
6 years.
6 years. It's amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Very proud of you. When, the reality of your using came to light, it shocked me. And as somebody who was in recovery, I thought that I would have known, because I talk with people who are in active addiction all the time. I was talking to people who are in the beginning of the recovery all the time. Talk to people with multiple years in recovery all the time. Like, I know these people, and they say that we know each other. You can tell by the language, you can tell by the way they walk, you can just tell by how they act if somebody's using when you used to use. And it's the same thing with recovery. You know when somebody else is in recovery, you have a little 5-minute conversation with a stranger and you're like, wait, do you do the 12 steps? And it's like, yeah, right? We just recognize each other.
Right.
But when it came to my own family, when it came to you and your brother, I did not see it, and that, I kept saying to myself, like, how could I not know? How could I not know? But for families out there that are dealing with a loved one's addiction, whether it's a husband, a wife, a cousin, a brother, whatever, when it's in your family, it's very hard to see the truth, because it's hard for us to comprehend that somebody would do something so destructive to themselves when we love them so much. Thanks for watching Rocn Recovery this week. So we will see you next week right here, Rocn Recovery. Bye.